There's the adage, the NFL never sleeps. It's a 12-month-a-year endeavor. It's really that way for the scouts, for the Kansas City Chiefs. With General Manager Brett Veach and his entire staff, they have to run all the time. We will explore that in this episode of Defending the Kingdom, and we're calling it Staffing the Outposts. And, of course, it's brought to you by Ticketmaster. McKinnon is in at running back. First down and goal to go. Play action fake. Right side throw. Touchdown! Kansas City! McCole Hardman with the catch on the right side. A 3-yard touchdown pass in overtime. Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. And we're really excited to bring you this episode because we're going to take you to places you haven't been very much or ever at all, and that is in the world of the scouts of the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we do that, we have some matters that are of expediency, and remind you, we'll go around the world as well. But a couple of signings that we have to deal with, and let's start with, if you're from Wales and a part of not only the United Kingdom but the Chiefs Kingdom, you'll be really excited. We have signed a rugby player. I get asked about this almost every day. What's going on with Louis Rees-Zammit? So here we are. We've signed a awesome rugby player from Wales. And what's he going to do?
I've been spending hours watching rugby trying to figure it out because we're sports guys, right? But I don't watch rugby, so I don't really know how it works. There's obviously similarities. And when you watch Louis Rees-Zammit play rugby, you can see immediately how maybe he could fit on a football field. There's going to be a learning curve. Obviously, it's a different game, but there are some similarities. A few things about him. He's only 23 years old. It's kind of the amazing part of European athletics and professional athletics that he was playing professionally at like age 18. So he's still only 23, even though he's been playing professionally for quite a while. He was part of the International Player Pathway Program. Basically, it's a really cool thing. It gives players from around the world an avenue and an opportunity to get in front of pro scouts and to be on professional rosters. And the valedictorian of this is Jordan Mailata from the Eagles, their starting tackle. So there have been some guys that have really become big players out of this.
And if I'm not mistaken, a former rugby player.
I believe so. Yep. So Louis Rees-Zammit is trying to continue that tradition. He has really good speed. He was once clocked at over 24 miles per hour, ran a 4.44 40-yard dash at the International Player Pathway Program Pro Day, which is in late March. That would have ranked 5th among all running backs at the Combine, so some context. And I don't fully know what this means, but I kind of know what it means. He scored 14 tries and 31 matches for the Welsh national team during his career playing for them. Also a fun fact, his dad grew up playing football. So Louis watched football as a kid, has always loved football. His favorite player growing up was Deshaun Jackson, who, of course, played for Coach Reed in Philadelphia. And now, look at Louis. He's playing for Coach Reed. Pretty cool.
You and I are and I love the International Gateway Program. And we've seen it with Godric and others in this organization. But we've seen it, some others. You mentioned the valedictorian being Mailata. But we'll see certain areas of the world, in specific the African continent, and there's just a proliferation positively of first and second generation Africans who are impacting the National Football League. It's just awesome to see it. And we're going to see more of it as time goes on. But you and I are nerds about watching OTAs. We know, coaches trained us now, going into a 12th year with Andy Reid, how important every day matters in the offseason and with the OTAs. But I'm really going to be excited about this, of like, where does he fit? Can he pull this off? He looks like a special teams menace for sure. Everybody going, the new kickoff rule, maybe that, because it kind of looks like rugby.
Yeah, it does.
And we're going to have scrums with this crazy new setup in the kickoff rule. That's a whole other podcast to go through that sometime. But the fact that with his speed and power and his athleticism, there's a shot. I do know this. If he works out, then all 31 teams in the league are going to be going and looking at every rugby team throughout the world. I love what Rees-Zammit has done, too. He has competed at the highest level. There's basically a World Cup, like we know about for soccer, in rugby. It's a big deal. My daughter lived in Botswana for 2.5 years with her husband. They live just north of South Africa. It's gigantic in the southern part of the African continent. But when they have the world competition in rugby, it's a big deal. Like they shut down and they're going to their power and light and they're watching this. So there are a lot of talented rugby players throughout the world that if it translates somehow to American football, this will be a thing more than just, a novelty. So I'm very curious to see how this will work.
My sister dated a guy from Italy for a while, and then they broke up a handful of years ago, and she's engaged to somebody else now. He's a great guy. I like him a lot. But I was so tempted to text this ex-boyfriend because he loved rugby. And whenever he would visit us here in Kansas City, he would stay up late and watch rugby. And I almost texted him, like, hey, what do you know about Louis Rees-Zammit? I didn't do it. I was like, that'd be weird. I shouldn't contact him. It's been like 5 years. But, yeah, I'm excited about it. Again, if you watch some of his highlights, where he really succeeds is on the edge. Yeah. So think about Coach Reed, most creative mind out there offensively, maybe ways to get him outside on the perimeter and use his speed on the edge. The funny thing is if you watch some of his highlights, the way rugby works, I guess, is you'll carry the ball for a while and you'll drop it and start kicking it. Just don't do that, Louis. Hold on to the ball.
No, don't do that. Or roll it back.
Yeah.
Like they'll do the lateral thing. They got that thing down. And honestly, there is a long-time rugby team here in Kansas City, the Kansas City Blues. And I don't know if they still exist, but they were a thing for a while. And they would play – the colleges around here usually have a club team in K-State, KU, Mizzou, and some of the other smaller schools. But the Blues were a deal, and they would travel. And it's just not something we follow as fandom here like we do – like it is in the other parts of the world. But so rugby's not completely new to some parts of the kingdom. But it'll be fun to watch this because it feels like a special teams dynamo here maybe. But OTA number 1, man, where's he at? What's he going to do? And how's he fit into this? The second one you do know about if you follow the National Football League at all, and it's Carson Wentz, who is now slated to be the Chiefs' backup to Patrick Mahomes. And I'm really excited about this one. It kind of – we'll get to this in a second. But Carson Wentz, he was the second overall pick in the 2016 draft, the year before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. We saw him have NFL MVP caliber season, right? He gets hurt, so he's not part. Another former Chief has to win the Super Bowl for the Eagles and Doug Peterson in 2017 at the end of that year. But Carson Wentz is a really talented athlete, to the point where he became the story of the 2016 draft in many ways, and now he's the Kansas City Chiefs backup. And it's exciting to see him because he seems like an awesome fit with what's going on here culture-wise, and a guy who could be an incredible backup quarterback.
He's had some really good seasons. I mean, he's an 8-year veteran. He had that MVP caliber season that I really think he might have won MVP in 2017 if he hadn't gotten injured in early December. He had a great shot at it. But look at his career. He has 153 touchdown passes. He has 3 separate seasons in his career, including in 2021 with the Colts, where he had at least 27 touchdown passes. That's really good. To have that kind of player as your backup, I mean, hopefully he never plays, right? But if needed, it's not just a situation where you feel comfortable with him playing in the game. He could help you win a game because of what he can do. He's proven that he can be that kind of player during his career. And he can also make plays with his legs. This guy's athletic. Doesn't just have a big arm. He's 6'5", 237 pounds, but can move. Look at his one start last year with the Rams. It was in their season finale against the 49ers. He went 17 of 24 for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also a rushing touchdown at the end of that game. It was late in the fourth quarter. He had a 12-yard touchdown scramble to put them down 1, and then converted a 2-point conversion with his arm to win the game for the Rams. This guy can play. He's really not that old. He has experience, but he's not too old. He can move with his legs. He can throw the ball. I'm excited about this. Again, hopefully he never plays, but if he does, I feel good about him.
31 years old. He was the Pro Bowl. He was the 2017 Pro Bowl, even with the injury. But then you go back, he had a redshirt year at North Dakota State. North Dakota State's the juggernaut of FCS, although South Dakota State's going, hey, how about us winning back-to-back? Yep, Jackrabbits, we have not forgotten about you. But during his 5 years, he was there redshirting a year. They won 5 FCS national championships. He won 2 himself as starting quarterback, Chris Kleiman, with Chris Kleiman as coach, who's now at K-State. They're very close. So Coach Kleiman's excited to have him back, Carson Wentz, with us. But this is a very talented athlete. You laid it out there. But again, it has to fit the culture. And it just seems like Carson Wentz has done that. He's been a lot in the system because he was in Doug Peterson's system with the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's going to be a quick learn, I think, for him in coming in here. But I'm also excited about him in OTAs and mini camps of watching Carson Wentz turn it loose. And, again, you hope he never plays, but if he does and could, yes, excited about him. Now, he's going to be part of this episode that we're bringing you of staffing the Outposts. But before we do that, let's go around the world.
Let's do it. I also have one more nerdy thought on Carson, if that's okay. This is very nerdy. And I don't know if this will come to fruition, but Sam McDowell at the Star did a little investigative study here. Did you know Carson Wentz has a career success rate on quarterback sneaks of 88.7%? And in 2021 with the Colts, he had the third most valuable season based on quarterback sneaks by a player in the last decade in terms of EPA, which is an advanced metric that stands for expected points added. Carson Wentz can do a quarterback sneak. I don't know if they're going to use him in that role, okay? I'm just saying he can do it. He's really good at it. And my dream of having two quarterbacks in the field at one time, maybe it comes to fruition. I don't know. Just throwing out information. Carson Wentz can quarterback sneak with the best of them.
Pat he'll be all about that. Like, yeah, let's do the two quarterback thing. You know Pat won't balk on that. But the Chiefs Kingdom, if we run a quarterback sneak, because we haven't run one since October of 2019. We all know what happened on that night in Denver.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, we've run Belldozer and we've run the Noah Gray. Let's go in motion and then try to but if we run a quarterback sneak with a quarterback, the Kingdom will lose it.
Well, and the difference is Blake Bell and Noah Gray, they're not going to throw the ball. But Carson Wentz, you can motion him under center with Pat and the shotgun. And you think a quarterback sneak's coming, but then maybe Carson could throw the ball. I don't know.
To Pat. Pat wants a touchdown.
Pat, yeah.
He wants a touchdown receiving really badly.
I'm just saying there's possibilities with this, all right?
Yeah.
So just putting out information. Let's go around the world.
Sure.
So we have a listener in Terrell, Texas. Shout out to Terrell, Texas. We heard from Alistair in Jurupa Valley, California. They were born in Kansas City, but raised in California. Never been to a game here in Kansas City, but they attended Patrick Mahomes' first ever start in Denver back in 2017. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I, of course, if you listen to our podcast often, you know that my in-laws live in Denver and are Broncos fans. And I've talked to them about this, that when they watch that game, they're just like, oh, no.
Them and Von Miller, he had the same thought. Yeah.
Just, oh, no. Yeah. And look what's happened in the last several years. We have a listener in Fort Scott, Kansas. Yep. Shout out to Fort Scott, Kansas.
Tigers.
Yep. I also met Luke and Daniel when I was at Whiteman Air Force Base last week. Amazing visit. Incredible visit. Everyone out there, shout out to all of you. We had an amazing time. It was part of like a Chiefs business staff outreach kind of thing where they showed us all over the Air Force Base. We got to, of course, see the B-2, which was super cool, but also saw a Black Hawk helicopter. Got to hang out with the K-9 unit, and that's where I met Luke and Daniel. Luke is particularly a big Chiefs fan. He braved the cold for the Dolphins game and was very proud of it. So shout out to you guys. And thank you for everything.
We need to give a
for
patch to anybody that attended that game.
Yeah, I mean, a
that
true
has to
badge
be
of
like
honor.
a medal we hand out to at least the Kingdom defenders that went to that game. Of like, they need to wear I was there, and endured it. So.
Including my wife, Ellie, and her best friend, Sierra, who were out there the entire time. Shout out to you both.
But she's from Dallas, South Dakota. She's used to it.
Yeah, Sierra certainly is.
Sierra is, I mean.
So I met Brian while picking up some dinner prior to the 101s a few weeks ago. Shout out to you, Brian. And then I also met Mark and Nick at the 101s. Big Chiefs fans. So shout out to all of you. Thank you so much for listening. A few housekeeping things here as well. So I got lots of messages about Fred Williamson. Everyone loved that.
The hammer.
Really enjoyed the trip down memory lane. So that was awesome. Paul let us know about the school located in Butte, Montana. Remember we were curious what the school was? We couldn't remember. You'll be kicking yourself on this one. I know what it is. Have you given it any more thought?
Not Northern State. No, that's in South Dakota. Okay, go ahead.
It's the Montana School of Mines.
That's it, Montana Mines.
We love the mines schools.
Colorado Mines.
South Dakota
Missouri
Mines.
S&T, South Dakota Mines, the hard rock areas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Montana School of Mines is in Butte, Montana, so now we know.
Love it.
And lastly, we had all of our Super Bowl hats out a few episodes ago, but just three of them, just from 54, 57, and 58. Well, heard from Steve in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've emailed with Steve a little bit now. He sent me a photo of his Super Bowl IV hat. It's super cool.
Mesh, 3/4 mesh around like the trucker hat?
See, I don't think so.
Oh.
I think it was more of like a complete hat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll have to look at it again, but it was super cool. We need to get our hands on one. But anyway, thank you, Steve, for showing me that. Made my day.
We've also created a little bit of a stir or some excitement about the 18-wheeler cab that I saw from Odessa, Missouri.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Okay, it's become a thing on X. And Rob, he's got his 4th decal up there. Right?
Okay.
This is awesome. I'll have to retweet this, re-exit, tweet it, whatever we're saying now. But I'll put it out there because he's updated it. But going down the road, it absolutely was mesmerizing me. I went around him on the turnpike and like, oh my gosh, look at this. So yes, we'll follow up on that. The greatest 18-wheeler cab that exists in the Chiefs Kingdom because the paint job's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yep, love it. And I've also met a guy who knows the biggest fan in Spain. We're going to continue in that case in later episodes. But this episode is calling Staffing the Outpost. And Carson Wentz, we'll just segue Carson Wentz into this discussion because we're going to talk about General Manager Brett Veach and his staff, basically a staff of scouts and personnel folks both on the college side and the pro side. But I was in the hallway, and it was in the winter of 2016. The Chiefs we just have won our first playoff game in 21 years, beating Houston, and then we lost to New England. That was the 15 season, but into the 16 early in the winter, 2 scouts, and I won't say who they are, we stopped in the hallway, and we kind of talked about the class coming up in 2016. And one of them said, you need to watch the quarterback at North Dakota State. I thought, all right. So then I was introduced to Carson Wentz, and now Carson Wentz, has become a thing, and now he's a Kansas City Chiefs member. But that discussion leads us into what we're going to talk about today, because I love the fact that you kind of bird dog some of these guys at the NFL Combine to those of you watching and those of you listening or doing both, to be exposed to the life and the importance of the Kansas City Chiefs scouts. I say this publicly and privately. The Chiefs have won for 11 years and now 3 Super Bowls in a span of 5 years, Super Bowl championships. There's 100 ways of why we win, but a big part of it are the scouts. And I'll tell you, I'll share with you another story. Leaving Allegiant Stadium on that glorious night, we're headed to the post-game party. So I'm on the bus, and I'm with the scouts, and I loved it. A good deal of them are surrounding me. And I just thought at that moment what these guys and gals do for 365 days a year, because they really don't ever shut down, to help us win championships. And we had a great discussion, and I thought it's only fitting that I was sitting with those guys, it was all guys of that group, that to discuss this championship, how awesome it was, and where we go from here, because they don't stop. And it was good for them to at least have a night where they could, chop it up. But they knew the next day they were going to go right to work again. But it's an amazing group of people. I'm glad that we're highlighting them and what they do, because for the NFL fan and the Chiefs Kingdom fan and the Kingdom Defenders, they need to know the value of these men and women.
They're amazing. And everyone knows Brett Veach. You probably even know Mike Borgonzi and Chris Shea, some of Veach's lieutenants. But you likely don't know the swath of people that go all over the country and spend 250 days out of the year away from Kansas City working on finding the next crop of great players. And you look at the last couple drafts for the Chiefs. Yeah, we got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce as the guys on this team and Chris Jones on defense. But the foundations beyond those star players of the last certainly 2 championships and really the last 3 championships were the draft. They were found in the draft. And we have these guys to thank for it, because they are working tirelessly to find these players, to find the right players for us. And like Mitch said, I had an opportunity to meet with 5 of them in Indianapolis about a month ago. We're going to let you hear from all of them here over the next 10 minutes. But the idea is to kind of tell the story of how the whole process works through their words. And the first guy you're going to hear from him, his name is Pat Sperduto. He is the Chiefs co-director of college scouting. I had a chance to talk to Pat about how the process starts for them every single year. And truthfully, it starts right when the draft ends, when they begin their spring and summer preparation.
Yeah, well, it really starts as soon as this draft is over, the next begins. I mean, we already have and our NFS guy is out there doing pro days for juniors, rising juniors. Once the draft ends, then we immediately start to look at the top guys in the country, and we'll divvy up the list. We'll have everybody in their area kind of look at them and give we call it a summer grade. So they'll put together the summer grades, and then at least we know going into the summer, these are the guys that everybody needs to just take a peek at. So, and then we get into camp, we finalize everybody's schedule, and then off we go and we enter these schools and try to get as much information as we can.
Okay, really cool stuff there from Pat Sperduto. Again, think about the last couple drafts, right? Think about getting players like George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie, these players that help us win championships. Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round, Jalen Watson, all these guys. The process of finding those players does not begin in February when the combine occurs, or it doesn't even begin when the college season begins in August or September. It starts immediately after the draft ends. They're figuring out, okay, who are the guys we want to watch? And they clearly do a very, very thorough job, and it begins right away.
Coach Reed has a saying, and someone who grew up on a farm, as I did, can identify with this, but he goes, a farmer's work is never done. You take a breath. I know growing up we'd take a breath after harvest, right? But you're just starting once again. You're harvesting, you're planting, you're fertilizing, you're doing it in this cycle. That's the way the Scouts are. I remember after the Super Bowl 57 championship, Brett Veach sent me like a 3-second video that I played to start the kickoff luncheon last year, because we're all recovering, or we just had this great parade. The next morning, the Scouts were meeting. They were meeting. He says, here's how we're celebrating, right? They took a breath. They took a breath with the celebration. The next day, they're grinding.
Crazy.
And you think about the Chiefs now have played 7 years and 6 when you count the 18 playoff games we have played. The Scouts have to live 2 lives. After week 18, everybody's kind of on the same wavelength. But if you're in the playoffs and you make a run to the Super Bowl, which the Chiefs have done 4 times in 5 years, and the other year they were in the championship game of the AFC, the Scouts have to live 2 lives. They do not stop. It's like they have to have 2 brains, 2 hearts, 2 pancreases. They must go and live these 2 lives, and it's amazing what they do. Pat Sperduto, 15 years in this organization. He's such a key part of it. And then, again, and as we go to your second interview here with David, who's 7 years with the team, but he's been with 5 other teams. It's part of the rhythm that Brett Veach has put together with his staff. Guys that have been around a long time. We'll get into those somewhat later. Some that are brand new. But it's really a spectacular group of folks in what they do and how they do it. But then, and they're on the outposts. They're not here every day. They're living their lives all around the nation, basically. And yet there's sometimes they will come together that are seminal moments for them. It's almost like a convention of a sales team that is spread out across the country. And one of those is training camp. Training camp in St. Joseph is important for so many reasons. But for these guys and gals that Brett Veach has and his staff, training camp's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And you heard from Pat Sperduto about how the process works in the spring and summer. Well, toward the end of the summer, in mid-July and early August, the guys get together in St. Joe at training camp. And you'll hear from David Henson next. He is the Chiefs' other co-director of college scouting. And what he explained was how they kind of figure out their schedule from then on out. Of course, they meet at training camp, but from there, they're going to divide and conquer all over the country. They're going to figure out which scouts go to which areas, what schools you're going to go to, what players you're going to watch. And in addition to that, you're not just watching certain players, you're watching every single player who could be in the upcoming draft.
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up really quickly because, when training camp starts is really when it starts for us. Like, we start making our schedules, we get all the scouts together, we figure out where they're going to go, what schools they need to be at, what needs to be covered. So we also have what we call over-the-top guys. So we have our area guys that go out and they go into their schools, and then we have guys over top of that also go into school. So we figure out, okay, here's where the area guys are going, and then here's where we need extra coverage. So then once training camp is over, we're out. we're going to all the training camps around to all the colleges, and then we go from there to fall, just evaluating all the players out there. Each individual scout, like I said, is going to go, like say they have New York, they're going to go into all the schools that they need to be in New York, so University of Buffalo or Syracuse. They'll go in there and they're not just going to evaluate the quarterback or the wide receiver. They have the punter, they have the long snapper, anybody that's a senior that starts and plays. Like we're gonna get an evaluation on them from not just how they play, but who they are as a person.
All right, great stuff there from David Henson. One thing that in my conversation with him I thought was really interesting and says a lot about our team and why we're so successful is that they're not just watching players and evaluating them through their lens. They're evaluating them based on what they know about the Chiefs coaching staff. And that might seem like an obvious point, but if you look around pro sports and pro football in particular, a lot of times you have a front office or a scouting group, and they are going to build the team in their image and give it to the coaching staff. And it's up to the coaches to coach them up. That's not how it works with the Chiefs. With the Chiefs, you have Coach Reed, one of the greatest coaches of all time, and his staff. They have a trust and a cohesion with the front office and vice versa, where the scouts are looking for players that they know Coach Reed and the rest of the coaching staff wants and likes. And that's not the case everywhere. It's certainly the case with our scouts.
This is the secret sauce. And again, you're saying, well, isn't this way everywhere? I would tell you it's very few places in professional sports where it's this way. And this way is this. I talk publicly and privately about the flow that exists horizontally and vertically throughout the entire organization. It really starts with Clark. But with Coach Reed, he brought this culture to us. But it's manifested in this discussion with staffing the Outposts because of the respect and communication and understanding that exists between the individual scouts collectively, but also between the pro and the college scouts. Now, Matt, I've lived the life on the other side. I've lived it because you can build a silo, or a scout will say, I brought the coach the player, like you got to coach him up. Or the coach would say, you got to get me better players. I can't coach this kid up. It happens all the time in the National Football League. It does not happen here. And it's a big reason why the Chiefs win. And the fact that you look at this cohesion, and I like what Jonathan said. Now, Jonathan has perspective here, too. Second year with the Chiefs, going into his third year, but he's been with New England. He's been with Carolina. He's got some outside-in perspective. And I love what he told you about how the scouts think. Not only what the coaches want, but the coaches respect the scouts, too. That's a big part of this, too, and that's because of Coach Reed. But then among themselves, because football teams and football staffs can, in specific in the NFL, can be fractured 100 different ways. These guys are cohesive, and it's spectacular to watch it work.
You ever seen Moneyball or read the book? It's both one of my favorite books ever and one of my favorite movies ever.
Kind of a nerd. It's a nerd
Big
thing.
time nerd movie. When they show the payroll at the beginning, it's the very first thing you see is the payroll of the Oakland A's versus the New York Yankees. And I was like, this is my kind of movie. My point, though, is that really paints the picture of how a lot of times you don't have a coaching staff and a front office that are working together. Because one of the keys of the movie is that Billy Beane is trying to construct this team the way he wants, and Art Howe is not having it. And they're clashing, and Billy Beane wants Scott Hatteberg to play first base. Art Howe says he doesn't know how to play first base. I'm not playing him there. And eventually it all works out. Art Howe gets on board. But it can show that a lot of times in pro sports, you might think that everyone's working together and singing Kumbaya. Not necessarily.
No.
It is that way with the Chiefs, where there's
It's rare.
cohesion.
It's
It is
really rare, Matt. I know all of you need to know how rare it is here.
Mm-hmm. And we're so lucky to have it because it leads to obvious success. Now, Jonathan Howard is the one that you referenced that we'll hear from next. He is the Chiefs' national scout. He talked about that cohesion that the scouts have as a team. Because think about it. It'd be very easy when you're not spending a lot of time with these people to kind of get off into your own world, get egotistical, want only your guys to succeed. Not the case. These guys love each other, and they have an amazing relationship that's really similar to the relationship that our guys have on the field.
Yeah, I mean, our team is awesome. Like, I primarily work with Jason Lamb, Greg Castillo, Jalen Myrick, some of those guys in our department as well. And as a department as a whole, we all collaborate. And you guys, I'm sure, hear from Brett all the time of just the way that our unit is and how much he appreciates the group, and we appreciate each other. We have a really cool team culture, the same way that you see with our players, and it's all with a unified goal and vision. So I really appreciate everyone that I work with here, and we are all on the same page and have the same objectives. So it's a really good group.
All right, awesome stuff there from Jonathan Howard. You'll hear from Terry Delp here in a little bit, another one of the people in this conversation, but he kind of echoed the same thing that Jonathan said. They spend so much time apart and in different places and all over the country. Their favorite thing is to get together as a group and just grind film and just talk about things that they've seen, things that have stood out from their interviews with players, talk about their interactions. I mean, again, talking about nerds, right? That's a giant room of football nerds that just want to talk about football and all the things that they've experienced. And we're so lucky that these guys like each other and enjoy being around each other because, again, that leads to collective success.
And they have to adjust. You'd mentioned Mike Borgonzi, who's just brilliant. He was here prior to Brett Veach. Brett Veach kept him. Another guy is Ryan Nutt, who he kept here. Ryan's been with the Chiefs now going into a 15th year, Director of Player Personnel from the college scouting. But one of those other times they get together is the Combine, and that's where you chase them down. But how big is the Combine? What do they do at the Combine, and why is that part of the secret success or secret recipe?
Yeah, this was some interesting stuff from Ryan. I had a much longer conversation with him that maybe I'll put out at a different time, but he really did a great job of walking step by step through the entire process, and particularly for what you're about to hear at the Combine. So we all know about the Combine. You flip on NFL Network, they're showing the 40 times. You're seeing guys do like social media segments. It's the time where all of the top college prospects get together, and you get to see them run around and see what they can do. And this guy has a giant broad jump, and this guy is the fastest 40 time, all of that. Well, a lot of times, how do teams use that? Why is it important? And I think, for better or for worse, it gets a little bit blown out of proportion how certain guys do at the Combine, whether it be good or bad. But a lot of times we don't know how teams actually use this information. Well, Ryan talked about that, and he also emphasized probably the most important part of the Combine. It's the interviews. It's a chance for the coaches to meet these players and really get their first impression.
So the Combine's great because it's streamlined, and it's efficient in terms of it brings 321 players to one venue where you can get a thorough medical, cognitive tests, you can do interviews, you see them move around, you get physical testing, and then you see position-specific drills. It's competitive. It's a highly stressful environment. You can see how these guys handle that stress. Then you can compare and contrast amongst the position, like the strengths and weaknesses of each player. So it's great because you have it all under one roof, but I want to let it be known it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? It's not, we've never taken a guy off the board, or we've never drafted a guy strictly on their Combine performance in any respect. So while it is like important, and there's a part of it that is weighted, it's not the be-all end-all.
And the interviews, I'm assuming, have to be pretty important in all of this, maybe even more important than the testing is, because you have a chance to talk to these guys. Can you walk us through the importance of those and kind of how those work?
Yeah, so I'll break it up for you. So there's actually two sets of interviews that go on. There's formal and informal. Formal interviews are in a suite. There's about 15 people in there. There's 5 chairs at the front of the room. It's going to be your GM, your head coach, your position coach, your coordinator, and then the player. The position coach will run the meeting. The player will be in front of the TV. The position coach will go through the film and just talk us through what you see, man. Before they go through the film, the room is open for questions, right? So the first 2-3 minutes of it, we'll want to get a feel for the player. Just maybe a pressing question, or are you going to do everything at the Combine? Why not? Just to get maybe just loosen the mood a little bit and get them comfortable. Those last 20 minutes, and it's strict, you're on a deadline, you have a clock in your room, and once they're done, a new player comes in, you rotate. So while that's going on, concurrently, there's the informal interviews. Those are one-on-ones with the player who isn't up there interviewing with all the teams in the formals. They're kind of like the bullpen, waiting around, and that's where they'll wait, and they'll interview with coaches who aren't up there at a table, and it's a more of a one-on-one setting, so that's why they call it an informal, and those last 15 minutes. And the reason why they're important is because after this is all done, you get all the information, you get what the scouts feel about the player, your interactions at the Senior Bowl or at any All-Star event, your interviews, the interviews at the Combine, and you say, okay, who do we need to get more information on? Who weren't we able to interview? Who do we have to bring in on a 30 visit? Who can we just do a virtual interview with? And then it kind of just breaks down. It's really just an ability to kind of just whittle down and just get more information on guys.
All right, good stuff there. Really what I think is so fascinating about this is a lot of these scouts, they've been grinding on these players for months. They have a chance to meet them. They've watched them play in games. They've watched them practice. They've talked to their coaches. They kind of know everything about these guys. But I wonder what it must be like if you're a scout and you really like a handful of players and you get 30 minutes for them to meet Coach Reed or to meet Steve Spagnuolo or Matt Nagy or someone on the coaching staff, and you're just wondering how they're going to do. And, those interactions are so important, and you've already invested so much into that player with your knowledge of them. I think really that's where the Combine is of the highest importance. It's, can you show Coach Reed and the coaching staff that you have what it takes to be a Chief? And some guys probably don't, but some guys surely do.
Exhibit A is the 2022 draft class. That group of guys who led to the Super Bowl 57 and 58 championship, but in their rookie year winning Super Bowl 57 is a prime example of that. Because if you spend 3 to 5 minutes with any one of those guys, you're going to go, oh my gosh, these are amazing humans, not just great players. And I'm talking the Trent McDuffies and the Carl Holthuses and the Brian Cooks and going right down the line, right? The Jalen Watsons and the Joshua Williams, that group. And that, to me, is what comes out of the interview process and why the Chiefs are really good at it. Another one, and I love the way that Brett Veach has blended his staff. He's got some newcomers, and I'm really excited about Madison Aponte, right? The gal who's been with us now going into her third year. She was part of the Norma Hunt Fellowship to kind of integrate into the front office, and she's great with us. But there's some long-time Willie Davis, who was the hero of the 94 win over John Elway he caught the Montana pass. I call him right front pylon. If I see him in the hallway, he's right front pylon. That was my rookie year. He made that catch. But he's just an awesome scout. His son's really good football. He's got sons, I guess, a good football player. But Terry Delp's another one. Great Bend, Kansas. 21 years he has been here. So he preceded 2 different groups of GM groups, and as a guy that has been a terrific contributor. So you have these younger ones and you have these people that have been around a generation, but T. Delp had some interesting perspective.
He did. And you've heard from these other people about the process. How does it all work? What do we do in the spring and the summer? How do we handle football season? Why is the Combine important? Well, what I asked Terry was for an example of a player that he did all of that for, and that player ended up being a great Chief. And I think you'll enjoy his answer.
I would say Nick Bolton's a good example. Did he just blow testing out of the water here? No, he wasn't a superstar. He was good, but then you go back to the tape, and he's just an unbelievable football player. And then the coaches meet him. He's an unbelievable person. Like, it's just, and that's what we got. We got a heck of a player.
When you think about all the work that you put in on a guy like Nick, how satisfying is it when you see him running into the end zone with a fumble recovery for a touchdown in the Super Bowl?
It's good that, it is rewarding, but like, he's our player. And a good scout once told me, if he turns out to be a good player, he's our player. If he turns out to be a bad player, he's my player.
So Nick Bolton was the guy that he wanted to bring up, and that's a good one. And I asked him in the interview, and I'll just bring it up again, it has to be so rewarding when you put that much work and effort into a player. Not only do they work out, they make one of the game-changing plays in the Super Bowl. But then when I ask him, do you feel any personal pride in that? Despite all the work he put in, despite all the hours and the time and everything, and it ended up being a smashing success, he doesn't take any credit. He's so hesitant to take any credit at all. He's like, well, he's our player. We did it together. I didn't do that one. I think it's amazing. I think it says so much about this organization that there are not egos involved when they're doing this, and that's unique.
What I've noticed about these guys and being in this league for 31 years, but this group, since Brett kind of put them together and kept some old and new and brought in some, is the fact that they have to, their victories, that's why that bus ride from Allegiant Stadium to our post-game party was so awesome, because that was a moment they could take pride in it collectively. But personally, they know T. Delp knows that if he was on the Bolton case and Bolton has become a star, and I mentioned the 22 draft class, oh, how about the 21 draft class? But the fact that you're at a stoplight or you're staring at your laptop or you're driving to that college to do an evaluation or go to a pro day, that's when you know in your heart of hearts the satisfaction of I helped us win because I saw something in Nick Bolton that I thought he could be a star. That's where T. Delp and all the others have to, you don't get it publicly, but there's a private moment by yourself where you make that claim. But then publicly you're humble because there's a lot, for every Nick Bolton, there's a lot that didn't work out.
Sure.
But the point is that's how they have to train themselves to kind of keep themselves going a little bit. And there's some personal pride, but it's a private personal pride that they must have. And that permeates through this whole group that Brett Veach has, including Brett himself.
Totally agree. And I just want to emphasize again to the Kingdom, as we're wearing our Super Bowl champion hoodies, right? Our third hoodie in 5 years. There is so much that goes in to winning a championship, and we know about a lot of the reasons. It's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Brett Veach, Clark Hunt, Andy Reid, all these public-facing figures. But it is also guys like Terry Delp and Pat Sperduto, David Henson, Jonathan Howard,
Greg
Ryan
Castillo.
Nutt, Greg Castillo.
Yeah.
Like, we'll talk to some
Wish
even
we could
more of
mention
these
them all.
guys later. But
Tim Terry on pro side. Yeah.
it is these people that dedicate everything
Yeah.
to hopefully finding one or two players that they are responsible for in the draft. And maybe that player will contribute. And I'm so happy for these guys that they have been rewarded with one of the greatest runs for any team in North American sports history over the last 5 years, because they put so much work in. And even though they're not going to publicly say it, it has to feel so good when you see these players, particularly players selected later in the draft, making huge plays in big moments.
Think of the United States, the ambassadors that we have in nations. These scouts are very much that for the Chiefs Kingdom. They're on these outposts. Let me give you a very tangible way that we don't think about as fans where this becomes very important. After the draft is over, the bell rings and it closes it with Mr. Irrelevant. All heck breaks loose. It's this flurry of communication and calls and connection to get your group of undrafted free agents. And we have seen the Chiefs, whether it's Cam Jones last year or Jack Cochran, we've seen undrafted free agents become key to success. These scouts are the conduit to those guys. They have been on campus. They have done the study. They've said, here's the group, and they target the group they're going to call for UDFAs. And it's this group that we're highlighting that makes that happen. And it has to happen in a split second, but it's been months of doing their due diligence. So let's also give them credit as we close here for the work that they do that goes beyond the draft. And even on the pro side, we have seen the Drew Tranquils and the pros that we talked about actually in a previous episode where they do the diligence of, and then going back to we talked about this, then they'll go to the college guys and go, hey, what do you have on Tranquil? And they'll go back to look at the research that they've done on Drew Tranquil when he was at Notre Dame or even Fort Wayne when he was in high school. That's just an example of they work together. But they are the conduit or the ambassadors many times to these colleges where you have to find these players.
Tim Terry, who we've mentioned a little bit, is on the Chiefs pro personnel side. He's in charge of that entire group. He told me this a couple of years ago about how unique it is that not only does the Chiefs coaching staff and front office work cohesively together, the pro side and the college side work so closely together. And again, that's how it should be. Like, that's obvious. This shouldn't be like a big revelation, but it is, because in the world of sports, for some reason, because there are so many egos involved, a lot of times you'll have a college scouting department and a pro scouting department that don't really share everything because they want to be the one that gets the guy. They want to be the one that's getting all the credit. And with the Chiefs, they don't really care about that. With the Chiefs, as you said, there are times when maybe the Chiefs are interested in a player. Hollywood Brown is a great example. Hollywood Brown told us that the Chiefs were interested in him way back in, 2019?
Yep.
Didn't work out. Didn't draft Hollywood. He went to the Ravens. Well, here, 6 years later, when they were interested in Hollywood, I am certain that at some point, Tim Terry went to the college scouting department and said, give me all your information on Hollywood Brown. What did you love about Hollywood Brown when he was at Oklahoma? Again, that seems so simple and obvious. Everyone should do that. But I'm telling you, not every pro scouting department and college scouting department work together like that. The Chiefs, those two units certainly do.
Again, their victories many times have to be in private moments. You can go to your favorite search engine and look these gals and guys up in Brett Veach's staff and have a private moment at a stoplight in front of your laptop or PC and just clap. And clap for them because they deserve it. And that's probably the only applause they will hear. But these are unique people, and the Chiefs are winning because of them, and they are staffing the Outposts.